everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, I am Mariana and I interview the brightest minds of physical therapy. So if you want to increase your knowledge, start right now by subscribing to this channel, clicking on the bell so you don't miss anything, give us a thumbs up and share with your friends. Today our guest is David Grigsby and he's going to talk about telehealth, the changes over the years, challenges and where it's heading. David graduated in 2002 and got McKenzie certified in 2006. Since 2007, he has owned and provided care at MidSouth Orthopaedic Rehabilitation. And David has provided telehealth visits for 10 years now. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hi David, welcome to PT Pro Talk. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Mariana, for having me on.
And I'm super excited to talk about telehealth today. So let's jump right in. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and how did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I originally grew up in Louisiana and I came up to Memphis, Tennessee, back in the late 90s, actually, for physical therapy school, completed physical therapy school. Did my last internship at an orthopedic clinic here in town where MDT or McKenzie trained therapists were working with patients. I'd gone from kind of a background of manual stuff, spray and stretch, trigger points, things of that nature, to seeing someone stand across the room and fix somebody's neck and radicular type symptoms or arm symptoms, and thought, man, this is a lot different from what I've ever experienced. I got an early taste of MDT and the McKenzie Institute and what they do. So I was hooked from the get-go, from the start. So I finished that clinical and they actually hired me to stay on, went through my MDT training at that clinic as well. And then just through a process of connecting with a friend there that was working as well, we decided that we wanted to open our own practice back in 2007. So we branched out, opened our own practice with the emphasis on that time with direct access, getting patients early on into our clinic. So we could change the downstream model that was going on, where people were going to see a doctor and they were getting an image, they were going back to the doctor, then getting an injection or medicine, and then they were going to PT, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks down the road. So I really wanted to work on getting to patients early, get them into the clinic. And through that, it kind of led into the telehealth component of what we do about 10 years ago. It kind of started with my wife had a student who had really terrible neck and shoulder blade pain one morning that came into her classroom. She had called and just said, hey, I've got this kid that's just crying, screaming. She's hurting so much. Can you all help her? So my business partner at the time jumped on the phone, talked her through some stuff and helped her out. And then I was seeing a friend of mine who was a missionary down in Guatemala through Skype at the time, way back before all the rules had changed and what we could do, trying to help him out with some issues. And then, little by little, you start helping a friend here, family member here, a patient that would travel. I was seeing folks from a large Fortune 500 company here in Memphis who had their VPs traveling to Russia and Poland and places like that quite a bit. So they'd be gone a week or two sometimes. And so you'd continue their continuity of care through seeing them through telehealth that way. So it's kind of how I transitioned from school, getting involved with PT and MDT, and then opening private practice just to change the model a bit, get to people earlier through direct access, and then incorporating telehealth through that as a way to not only meet the needs of patients, but also to meet new patients over the years.
I think like most of us PT already passed through the situation of trying to help someone over the phone. So we kind of intuitively do it and don't even realize that we are doing so. And I think, at least for me, on the beginning, when everything happened with the COVID, it was like, that was a weird idea to see patients through telehealth. And then when you start looking and thinking about it, you see it's not that different than what we do in our clinics, at least the McKenzie trained therapists, because we don't have to touch them in a lot of the cases. And we find out that we can adapt. So I think it's just a crazy idea that started. And I think now it's becoming more and more popular, and therapists are stopped to think about it and see that it's not that different from what we do. My question is, do you think that the public in general is educated and understand that PT can be done virtually? And have you noticed any changes in the mindset of the population since the pandemic hit?
I would say yes and no, knowing the fact that a lot of people don't even know what physical therapists do still. They're still not coming to us as a forefront to their problems, especially musculoskeletal care. They have so many options from chiropractors, massage therapists, neurologists, orthopedists. So just them knowing what we do, especially MDT clinicians, because we're a smaller group that focuses on assessment, not just treatment. So from the aspect of just knowing what we do as PTs, I still think people are limited, although that's grown a ton, and the mind shift is slowly shifting for sure. From a telehealth standpoint, previous to March of last year, when everything kind of shut down and telehealth ramped up for a lot of people, my practice really, it was 5% telehealth. And so I've done webinars, I've done conferences, I've talked on telehealth for years. But I kept telling people, look, it's not a majority of my practice. Still, most people want to come in and see me, and seeing them online is kind of foreign, even though they have a cell phone that they'll do FaceTime with consistently with friends and family. So definitely was foreign to people, not something they were very comfortable with. If you mention it to a doctor or a doctor friend, they're like, you're doing what? Through what? So definitely since March of last year, I've definitely seen the being receptive to it. I have lots of patients that are on Medicare that do telehealth, which is something before the pandemic never would have happened, really. It would have been very rare to see that, one, because Medicare didn't cover it, and two, Medicare patients didn't want to pay for it. They wanted to be in the clinic, but they've become much more receptive to the being able to see through telehealth, especially not having to be out in public and be around people with the concern for their health. So I've seen that increase. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in research with Mark Wernicke and some others over the years. And we have a telehealth paper that hopefully will be published soon. And we looked at just kind of the overall component of physical therapists across the country using focus on therapeutic outcomes. How many of those therapists were actually using telehealth through the pandemic? And the number of physical therapists that actually use telehealth is, unbelievably low. It's like 6% if you look at the data. So it's very interesting that even physical therapists aren't using it very much, even though they have that aspect out there to help treat their patients and take care of them. So even during the pandemic, patients may know more about it, but a lot of physical therapists aren't using it. And so it's definitely transitioning and improving as far as accessibility, as far as people being interested. But I don't think it's anywhere close to what any of us really would like for it to be.
Yeah. I think for the therapists, it's initially hard. And I imagine the people that have their model focus on manual therapy, how can you imagine seeing a patient if the majority of what you do is manual therapy? So I imagine it's hard for the therapists too. And
one of the biggest questions that I had throughout the pandemic, I was fortunate enough, since I've been doing this for a while, I had other therapy clinics, physician offices call and say, hey, how do I do this? Because physician models even were just disrupted. People weren't coming in for their annual care. They weren't coming in for follow-ups because of the pandemic. They were scared to get out, especially they wanted to be in a doctor's office with a lot of other people. And so a lot of offices were scrambling just to know, what are we going to do? We can't see people. People aren't coming in. How do we meet their needs? And, I was grateful to be able to work with a lot of people during that March, April, and May time last year where we could get them started on telehealth. But that was one of the questions. How do you get people to do telehealth? And I said, well, your care has to be conducive to telehealth. If everything you've done is, I have to put my hands on you, I have to do this for you, you have to receive this from me. And then you say, oh, no, we're good. We can totally do this a different way. It's no big deal. It's a hard sell to patients. Whereas like MDT clinicians, where yes, we have a manual component to it and it's part of our progression of force, but you can find different strategies to implement to help that patient. It's a lot easier to say, how we do it in the clinic where I'm watching you, I'm talking through stuff, I'm showing you how to do this. We're doing the same thing on the camera. It's no different. We're just not physically 6 feet away from each other. So it's a lot easier to sell that to patients from that aspect of, we're not doing anything different than we normally do. And if something does need us to get our hands on it, then we can easily get you in the clinic. It's not a problem, but definitely a lot harder for other clinicians who have done manual care only for their patients, or majority of it, because it's a harder sell to say, hey, now all of a sudden we're not going to do all those things I told you that you absolutely needed. We're going to just do these things, which now you just absolutely need. So it's a very good point.
Yeah. And so how do you market to this public and make them aware that's an option?
Well, social media is great. It gives you a platform to reach out to people through, posts that you put out there, patient examples, things of that nature. I do a lot of networking in the community. So I'll get together with other business owners on a weekly basis. I go to different places and speak on the benefits not only of physical therapy and early MDT care, but also on telehealth. So that's been a big thing for me as far as my business, as far as accessibility and people being interested in telehealth. And then again, once you can network and start to tell people about what you do, and then they actually do it, they start telling other people, and that grows over time. So it's kind of an organic growth that occurs with that. But it's definitely a lot of fun to see that growth occur over time. And then I don't do much as far as things outside of social media or networking in that way, or, church and school stuff with my kids and sports. But there are other avenues that I've seen people use, anything from TV commercials to stuff in the newspaper. I haven't done that, but I've seen others that have done that as well.
And I'm just curious to know, how is the acceptance by the doctors? Do they understand and refer patients to do telehealth?
I have one doctor group that's very receptive. Most other doctor groups, it's still foreign to them. Physical therapy is foreign to them a lot. But just, telehealth component, most of them are just fine with whatever helps the patient. So if we decide telehealth and the patient decides telehealth, they have no concerns with it. One doctor group specifically that was able to help get up on telehealth back in March, April, and May of last year, that see a lot of their patients still in telehealth, they're all for it. They say, look, he can do the same thing for you that we're doing right now. You don't even have to get out of your house. You don't have to wait in the waiting room. And he does a great job. So there are some physicians who are actually utilizing it on their own that are also encouraging patients to follow up through that method as well. But a majority of them are definitely not. It's definitely a minority of physicians that are still recommending and encouraging that kind of thing.
Unfortunately. And so what are the most common type of patients that you see that seek telehealth, and where do they come from?
Yeah, so early on, especially when I first started, I was mentioning to you, working with a couple of Fortune 500 companies and their VPs and them traveling, and we were doing telehealth that way. Friends and family members that had friends and family that were hurting in different places of the country back before 2015, before a lot of the parity laws and some of the other laws for telehealth came in. It was kind of a gray area. Doing telehealth, no insurances covered it. It was all cash pay. So you were just seeing, a friend in Ohio and they would pay cash, or a friend in California, someone in Guatemala overseas. Now that the laws have changed in 2015, you have to have specific license in the state where you're seeing the patient. It makes it a little bit harder just to see anybody anywhere. You have to get a compact license, which has been a great resource to me and a lot of others who are doing telehealth. So the patients for telehealth came from those early Fortune 500 companies, traveling friends and family. And then through the pandemic, it came through physicians as well as those who just weren't comfortable coming in. We saw that number jump, and tons of Medicare patients over the pandemic. I was really surprised how many Medicare patients did not want to come into the clinic, but they really want to do telehealth. It was a significant number for my practice over the last year, which was totally different from before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And how does it work through Medicare? Do they get reimbursed, or Medicare is just paying for now? Is that something that's going to stay, or do you have any updates on that?
Yeah, currently the Medicare payment goes through the end of April. And then there was some legislation that was proposed to extend that just this week. But we don't know what's going to happen with that probably until April. But currently they are paying, Medicare is paying like an in-office visit. You just have to use the right modifiers when you bill for it. Same as many other private insurance companies, they're paying for it as well. And pretty much sweeping all the insurance companies over the last year, they're paying for it for physical therapy.
Oh, that's awesome. And for example, for clients that pay out of their pockets to have telehealth, I don't know if you have any experience on that, but do you think it's easy for them to get reimbursed for telehealth?
Yes. So I do have patients that do pay out of pocket. We maybe have network with their insurance. So they'll pay out of pocket and they can file it with their insurance company. There are modifiers that each insurance company uses. So you need to know what modifiers like Blue Cross Blue Shield may want compared to Cigna, compared to Aetna, compared to Medicare, because they're all a little bit different in what modifiers they require based on your contract with them. So yes, if you understand what modifiers to use, when you file that with the insurance company, it files it as a telehealth visit, then yes, it should get reimbursed if that patient is in network with you and you're in network with their insurance company, I should say.
Okay, that's awesome. And so there's a lot of discussions. I don't have much knowledge about insurance, so maybe my questions are not very good. But so if a patient that has Medicare, but let's say Medicare doesn't cover for some reason, maybe after April, or if it stops covering, can you still see patients through Medicare? If they don't want to get reimbursed, for example, if they just want to come and see you and pay, is that like is allowed, or do you have to be associated somehow with Medicare?
So if it is a service that Medicare does not provide or cover, then you can charge a patient cash for that service. It would be like a wellness service that some physical therapists do, where you just charge them cash for that service. However, I would strongly recommend that if you have a healthcare attorney, that you get with them and you discuss that with them to nail down and confirm how you're treating patients through telehealth and what you're billing them or what you're charging for, especially if you have an MPI with Medicare and you're in network with Medicare. As a physical therapist, you can't just step away from it. You're locked into it. So they require you to bill as a physical therapist and to charge as physical therapist and practice as physical therapist. But if you do something outside of the scope of Medicare's coverage, then my understanding is you can charge them cash for that. Sometimes they have to sign what's called advanced beneficiary notice, an ABN, so that shows that they understand that it's not covered by Medicare. But again, I would encourage everybody, if you have a good healthcare attorney, before you start going down that road and getting in trouble with Medicare, that you nail down that what you're doing is definitely not covered and that paying cash for that service is appropriate through Medicare.
Yeah, I think that gets complicated very easy. So just you gotta be careful, right? And so what do you see happening like in the near future related to these insurances? Do you think that's gonna be a practice that's going to stay now, this reimbursement through telehealth, or do you think it's going to go back to the normal?
I do believe that it'll stay more consistently. What we might even see, and you never know. I mean, I think insurance as a general rule, their goal is to make as much money for their business as possible, which means they cut benefits all the time. So they'll shift benefits, increase deductibles. So you might even find that certain packages of insurance cover telehealth and others don't. I'm not 100% sure. I do believe for the near future that they'll keep paying for telehealth. If not, then it's kind of like Medicare. You can go back to people paying cash. That's what most everybody did until 2015. They just paid cash for the service because insurance didn't cover for it, and it wasn't in any of the contracts that we had with their insurance company. Now that they understand telehealth more, a lot of them are pushing it. I know certain companies like Humana, Cigna, Farm Bureau, they actually work with like Teladoc. They don't work with a specific physical therapy company that I know for telehealth, but they really encourage you to see a Teladoc physician annually, and they'll pay for X amount of it. So you might even see something like that with physical therapy in the future with a company that is providing physical therapy telehealth. They may say, look, we will provide physical therapy services for a lower copay or a lower price if you go see them through this instead of going in. We're seeing a little bit of a shift in the market that way with insurance companies paying for physicians and that are doing telehealth and having their clients or their patients go see them through that way.
That would be awesome. That would definitely help the patients to seek for telehealth PT, right? And my question now is more related to being a McKenzie clinician. And if you are, you want to use the method on your practice, and how do you advise people? Like, there is a way that we can build that through insurance, or do you think it's just better to go cash-based? Because we know the system with the units, that we have to charge different units when we work in clinics that take insurance. So what is your insight on that?
Yes, I have a hybrid model. I have cash and insurance. So there are certain insurances that I just am not a network in because of the reimbursement component of it. And because of that, I charge those patients cash. And it's a prorated fee depending on how much time I'm with the patient, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour. They pay based on that. So I think it just comes down to personal preference and what you feel like your value and your worth is as a physical therapist and your time. If an insurance company is paying you for that time in a price range that you feel meets your value and your worth, then I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be in network with that insurance company to get paid that way. If you don't feel like they're meeting your worth and what you do and what you provide, then definitely it's something you have to consider going out of network or just charging cash for. I know as MDT clinicians, we feel like we're giving something more than just the box of physical therapy where they send people through working in groups of 5 or 6, and you've got someone who has not been trained even as a physical therapist. You know, I was a technician as a younger person, and I'm very grateful for that experience I had, but I didn't know what I was doing. And so I was working with 5 or 6 people on a mat, taking them through exercises, and physical therapists come out and check every once in a while and then go back to the back or work with another patient and then come back out and check. And then they're billing, 3 or 4 units for those kind of things. So, and then you go out as McKenzie trained physical therapist, and what you're looking for is that one-on-one interaction, the ability to see the immediate change that occurs, to be able to modify things according to the response and the assessment that you're performing. So billing for that is truly your time compared to when you're sending them out to work with a tech or an aide or someone like that, where you're billing now for someone else's time. So you just have to figure out what works best for you as far as your value, and then go from there and make the best decision that way. I feel like a hybrid model works very well for us. It's helped quite a bit as far as helping negotiate other contracts as well. We can say, we'll just go out of network. And some insurance companies are willing to keep us in network based on our outcomes and some other things that we do. So it's definitely something to consider, even a hybrid model that may work for people.
Nice. And what are the important things that PTs that are getting started with telehealth should be aware of?
Definitely your local law, state laws as far as physical therapy is concerned. So direct access laws, I think, are very important to understand. Even though all 50 states have some form of direct access is not the same in all 50 states. So understanding your direct access laws, because a lot of your telehealth patients are going to be referrals from friends and family, not physicians at first. And so they may end up coming to you without a physician referral. So knowing those laws, understanding the parity laws. So parity law is the insurance company paying for physical therapy visit, just like they would an in-office visit. There's a good resource called the Center for Connected Health Care. Center for Connected Health Policy, so cchpca.org, that has all 50 states telehealth laws, rules, and regulations. So it's a good resource for people. APTA has tons of resources out there as well on where to start, what to look for, and where to go from as well. Some other things to consider are your platforms that you use for telehealth, making it convenient and easy for patients. When I first started doing telehealth, it was through Skype. So, you just send a Skype link, someone would connect, it was super easy. And then we couldn't use Skype because it wasn't secure, it wasn't HIPAA compliant. So we had to go through another company. And through that company, people would have to download an app. They'd have to log into the app. Then they'd have to connect with us. So it's 4 or 5 steps to connect. And so a lot of people just struggle to get the app downloaded, get into it, log in. And so there are resources out there now like doxy.me and some others where all you have to do is just simply send a link, kind of like Zoom, and they click the link and they're right there with you. So it's compliant with HIPAA. You have a business agreement with them. So they're not going to share information. And so it makes it a lot easier for you and for the patient. And it gives them accessibility, whether it's on their cell phone or whether it's on their computer, which again makes things so much easier than it used to be when everybody had the old big block cameras on the top of their computer that worked half the time and the old pixelated Wi-Fi. So things have gotten a lot better than what they were.
Yeah, that's true. Technology has been helping us. So I think it's making things way easier. And now more and more options coming up that we see, especially since the COVID started. So people are looking more for different options, and they are implementing telehealth on their platforms, the normal medical systems that we use. So I think that's all been very helpful. So let's transition to our final questions. So what are the resources of information that you would like to share with us?
As far as telehealth is concerned, the American Physical Therapy Association has put out a lot of good information over the past year, so it's a good resource. The Center for Connected Health Policy, like I mentioned, is a great resource. Again, looking at your local direct access laws are very important. It's a good resource. There are a number of different billing resources out there as well with regard to telehealth. When it comes to billing, though, probably the best thing for you to do instead of chasing all the resources out there is to get with your insurance companies that you're in network with and discuss with them what their requirements are as far as the modifiers to help bill that. And if there are any CPT codes that they will not pay for through telehealth. There are some CPT codes that will not be paid for. Obviously, manual therapy won't be paid for. I hate to disappoint anybody out there, but you're not going to get the 97140. And if you bill that, they're probably going to look at what you're doing. So different resource, the APTA, it's a great resource. The Center for Connected Health Policy, again, checking with your local insurance companies. There are Facebook groups out there that talk specifically about telehealth. I know Rob Binding, I've known him for a long time. He's been a big advocate for telehealth. He's had a huge Facebook group with a lot of information that's shared. I've learned a great deal from him, and he's shared a lot with me and vice versa. And then there's tons of research out there now on utilization of telehealth. There's a great deal of research on what telehealth can help and what it can improve. So looking up PubMed and typing in telehealth and physical therapy, there's a great deal of information, a wealth of information on what's been done through physical therapy to help people through telehealth. From a marketing standpoint, it can help physical therapists a great deal.
Great. And what would be the advice that you give to the clinicians that are starting their careers?
Oh man, I think back on when I started 18, 19 years ago, probably one of the best things that was told to me was, it seemed like when I first started, there was this kind of cold mentality to care. You didn't want to get too connected to the patient, didn't want to get too close to them. You just wanted to treat them and take care of them. But I think that's the worst thing you can do. I think truly caring for people, being empathetic, having a listening ear, one, it endears you to people. Number two, it develops relationships. And as a private practitioner, those relationships are what generate more business and growth and actually develop friendships over the year. So being empathetic to your patients, truly being caring, listening to what they're telling you, listening to their needs, and then working towards meeting those needs goes a long way. I feel like I was very fortunate from the start getting introduced to MDT. I see students twice a year here from the University of Tennessee. They come to me from other clinical rotations, and the one thing they tell me every time when they leave is, thank you so much for helping me have some structure and how to assess people, and then leading that assessment into treatment, and that treatment then leading into helping patients long-term. So if you haven't looked into MDT, if you've had no interest, or if your school hasn't pushed it, or you have a sour feeling about it just being an extension exercise, I really encourage people to look into MDT and the assessment process, the strategy that they give you to work through the history, the examination, which then leads into your treatment. It's life-changing, and it's fun to see the results of that over the years. So I'd really encourage people to do that as well.
Absolutely, especially the ones that want to work with telehealth.
Yep, that's right.
What personal qualities or abilities that you think are important to become a successful physical therapist?
I think a little bit about what I touched on a minute ago as far as being caring, empathetic. Those things are really important. You've got to be caring. If people don't know that you don't care, then they won't think you're caring about them, essentially. So caring for people is very, very important. Different qualities, you're going to stay busy with a lot of people. Oftentimes you start seeing multiple patients a day, and getting to know your patients is really important. So they want to be called by their first name or whatever name they prefer. And they want to be known. They want to know that they're known and not just another person that's running through the door. So if you can do those things, be empathetic, caring, know your patients, develop those relationships, it really goes a long way, not only to helping you in the immediate to take care of that patient, build trust, but also helps you down the road with continued referrals and people that really will be kind of brand disciples for what you do.
Yeah, that's very true. And David, for the ones that wanted to learn more about you, about your work, how they can contact you?
So our website is MidSouthOrthopaedic.com. Tells you a little bit about our practice currently. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, things of that nature. So Twitter is PT David G. MidSouth Ortho on Instagram. And then you can add a connection for email. People can reach out to me through email if they have questions or concerns. I'll be happy to give that to you as well. And then there's contact information through our website also at MidSouthOrthopaedic.com. So I'll be happy to connect with anybody, answer any questions they have, and help them along the way, because this is a fun journey. And it's something that will continue to grow. And the more people that jump on it now and understand it now, I think the better it's going to be, not only for them personally as clinicians, but also for their practices as they move along in their career.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David, for all your insights and your knowledge, and for sharing your experience over the years with me and my listeners. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talking to me today.
Yeah, it's a real honor to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thanks for being willing to wake up so early in the morning so we get this done. So I truly appreciate your time as well.